Good morning. This is the Blaine's World webcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You get more information and find out previous shows at our website, which is behind me. I think it's a little hard to read, but it's blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we focus on uh, positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And it's my pleasure to introduce Tracey Gruver with Pisgah Legal Services. And Tracey, you can wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this. Okay,
Oh,
that's true, Tracey. And Tracey's been a guest before, I think, what, 17 or 18 times before? No, not that many. But Tracey, your position with Pisgah is what?
I am part of the development team at Pisgah Legal Services. My title is Leadership and Legacy Giving Officer.
Okay, and so you've been with Pisgah now how long?
I started at the beginning of January, so just almost a year now.
Okay, you came on at some time to get involved now with the impact of the hurricane as well. Before Pisgah,
Yes.
when you were a girl, I maybe asked you this before, but you grew up as a child where?
I grew up in Ohio, actually, and moved to North Carolina right after I graduated from college in the early 2000s.
And so when you were growing up in Ohio, did you always know you wanted to be with a Pisgah, with a nonprofit raising legal awareness?
I certainly did not. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a singer. I wanted to, be on Broadway or something. And I ended up going to school to be a teacher, and I taught high school English for 10 years and just ended up making my way into nonprofit work.
And so how'd that come about? You just saw an ad or you just decided you wanted to make a change?
Well, I went back to grad school and I took a class in grant writing and found out that I was pretty good at writing grants. And so I started doing that for a nonprofit in Hendersonville, and it just turned into a full-time fundraising position.
Because that's quite a career trajectory from singer to
Hmm.
teacher
Hmm.
to
Hmm. Hmm.
fundraiser with Pisgah. I'm thinking out loud that that would be kind of an unusual pitch. You could sing your request, so you combine both careers, and get somebody to listen to you. So with Pisgah now, what does your job entail?
So I do a lot of outreach with our donors, our supporters, just to keep them up to date on what's going on with the organization, let them know what our current needs are. And then I also do a lot of networking in the community. So I go to chamber events and, just different community events to get to know people. I feel like once people know what Pisgah Legal does, they're generally interested in supporting. So it's really just about me getting out there and getting the word out to as many people as possible so that they understand what we do and how they can support the organization and the work that we do.
And so to summarize, I guess for maybe the two or three people out there who don't know what Pisgah is, because again, I
Hmm.
think you folks have done a great job getting out the word because everybody
Hmm.
sort of knows who Pisgah is. But if there are two or three people who don't know what it is, in we'll say maybe 2 or 3 hours or less, could you summarize what Pisgah is all about?
Of course. So, Pisgah Legal Services is a nonprofit organization. It's been around for a long time. They formed in 1978, so I think that's one reason why a lot of people do know about us. But we provide free civil legal aid to low-income folks in Western North Carolina, and we cover 18 counties, so we have a pretty large reach. But a lot of people don't realize that when you have a civil issue that you need to go to court for, like an eviction, or maybe you are fleeing domestic violence and need a protective order, or you have an immigration issue, um, those folks are not entitled to free representation for civil issues in court. And I don't know if you've ever had to hire an attorney, but it's very expensive. And so Pisgah Legal exists to fill that void for people who wouldn't be able to afford representation, so that when they go to court, they have a better chance, of having a good outcome because they have someone there who understands how the court system works and, all of the legalese that comes along with that.
And one of the cool things Pisgah provides, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you can't speak English, Pisgah can help you out as well.
Sure. Yeah, we have quite a few bilingual folks on staff. So if you speak Spanish, we can always help with that. And then for other languages that we don't have represented on our staff, we're able to access translation services for just about any language. So if someone calls in and they speak a language that, we don't have a staff member, we can get translation services set up so that we can help that person regardless of what language they speak.
So when people contact Pisgah, talk about like kind of the first step. So if they're in a legal situation, as you pointed out, it's not a criminal situation.
hmm
If they're in a
hmm
legal situation, what do? They go to the website, call you. What's the process?
They can do either, actually. We do have a way for people to go to the website, pisgahlegal.org, and they can just click apply for help. And then it will give them a short form to fill out, and then someone will contact them, usually by phone. Or they can call the office. That number is 828-253-0406, and they can talk to someone on the phone. And we have people who just screen calls, so they will, talk through with a person and find out exactly what their issue is, what they need help with, and then they can get them routed to the correct person. Of course, we also have to screen for income eligibility because unfortunately, we can't help everyone who calls. You have to meet the, income eligibility limits that we have for our programs. So they'll go through all of that on the phone with the person and figure out if we can be of service or not.
Now, I assume too, you encourage people to contact you by phone or the website as opposed to walking in off the street.
People can come into the office and talk to someone in person. Um, I think we encourage people to call or to start online because if they come to the office, they probably won't be able to get an appointment that day. So, we don't want people to waste a trip or to take time off work and then have to come back and do it on another day. So it's generally best to just call and get an appointment scheduled that way.
How long does the process take from the time I fill in a form, send it into Pisgah, until I get to meet with a representative?
That's a great question. And I really think that that depends on the specific issue that they're having. Um, we we have about 40 attorneys on staff, but we also use the services of pro bono attorneys from the community. So if somebody has an issue that maybe we don't have an attorney on staff who does that particular kind of case, then we will have to find a pro bono attorney who can help them. And so it just depends on how many people we have kind of in the pipeline that we can call on for that specific issue. So I think it could take, a couple of days. It could take a couple of weeks. It really just depends on the availability that we have and the capacity that we have. Of course, with, Hurricane Helene just happened. Our staff is not at full capacity right now because, we've all been going through this just like everyone else. So, it just depends on the situation, I think.
And since you mentioned it, we should give a shout out to the Bar Association because that's pretty
Mhm.
cool what they do with that. Explain the idea of the pro bono, what happens in that.
So we have hundreds of folks in the community who are attorneys who don't normally, do work for free, but they will take on cases for Pisgah Legal and they will volunteer their time. And so some of those attorneys may only take one or two cases a year. Some will take several. It really depends on the capacity that they have and also the kind of clients and cases that are coming to us on any given month. But it's great. I mean, we definitely could not do the work that we do and reach the number of clients that we do a year without those pro bono attorneys because they're giving their time is just so incredibly valuable and so helpful to the people that we serve.
And unfortunately, I guess there's more of a need than ever for Pisgah legal services because since you mentioned the hurricane situation, how has that affected your workload?
So it's definitely increased our workload, especially right after the storm. There were a lot of people reaching out with lots of questions, particularly housing questions. Our director of our housing services, David Bartholomew, did a great job of getting information out to folks right away after the storm, because people had questions like, I can't access my bank account to pay my rent, and my landlord is wanting the rent. Can they evict me? And so David was really great at getting information out to people to let them know that, yes, you have to pay your rent. However, if you can't access the funds right now, it is not legal for a landlord to evict a tenant without going through the court system. So, he just wanted people to know that yes, you still have to pay your rent. However, you can't be evicted until you go through court. And the courts were closed for a couple of weeks. So, he just really wanted people to understand that they have the right to stay in their home. They do not have to leave until they go through an eviction process. And so, it was just really important to us that we get that information out to people right away. But again, our staff was in the same situation as everyone else. A lot of folks didn't have internet, didn't have power, didn't have water. Lots of people had to leave town. So it was definitely challenging in those initial days to be able to help folks. But now, we are seeing a lot of people who need help applying for FEMA funds. And so we've set up clinics to help folks with that. We have lots of people calling about unemployment assistance, and we are trying very hard to help with that. But we don't have anyone on staff who is an expert in how to apply for those funds. So we're trying to learn as quickly as we can to be able to help folks.
And what's really sad is that folks, I guess, some people are needing more help than ever. I was just reading
Yes.
an article about the whole restaurant industry is really
Yes.
suffering, because all those people were out of work for, 2, 3 weeks. And even now they're
Mhm.
just starting to come back. And it's really
Mhm.
sad that I guess some people are never going to be able to come back, and that's
Mhm. Mhm.
difficult too. And talk about that, Tracy, in terms of, you mentioned civil versus criminal. Where does bankruptcy fit into that?
That's a great question. Um, so bankruptcy is a civil issue. I believe that we have some folks who can work on those cases, and or we reach out to pro bono attorneys about that. It's a very specialized area. And so I think it's something that sometimes we can help people with things that we don't typically do because of kind of the way that they come to us. And I'll give you an example. If someone comes to us in a domestic violence situation and they need a protective order from the abuser, we can help them get that protective order in court. We don't normally do divorces and custody cases. However, we will help with those things if it is a domestic violence situation. So it's kind of the same with bankruptcy. If someone comes in for something that they need that is related, we may be able to help them with that case and or find a pro bono attorney who can help them if we can't.
And one of the things you're so good at, and you mentioned this to me off the air, is that if you can't help them, you'll refer them to another resource that could help them. And you were giving me the example, I thought it was a good one,
Absolutely.
of the Chamber of Commerce, for example. And what were you
Mhm.
saying about that? How they can help
Yeah,
them?
so I know that a lot of folks are struggling with their business right now. Maybe they own a small business and they've had a huge impact from Hurricane Helene. I'm encouraging folks to go to the Chamber of Commerce in Asheville because they actually have services set up there right now to help people to be able to apply for disaster assistance loans, and just to get other services that they need as a business. And the chamber staff is very interested in helping folks to keep their businesses going. So that's a great resource. As far as for our Pisgah legal clients, we're referring folks anywhere that they can get, additional help besides what we can do. For example, folks who come to us that maybe are being faced with an eviction, or maybe they lost their housing in the storm. We're encouraging folks to go to Catholic Charities here in Asheville because they're helping with short-term rental assistance and utilities and getting things that getting things for your home that were lost or destroyed. Eblen Charities is also
Great. Yeah.
providing rental assistance. So, we try to work with the other nonprofits in the community to make sure that people are getting all of their needs met, not just their legal needs. Because we know that there's lots of resources out there. So we want to make sure and connect people in any way that we can.
What's sad is something you told me about off the air as well, that right now, when something happens like this, all of a sudden the case of domestic abuse increase. Why is that
Mhm.
so?
Yeah, domestic violence tends to increase in stressful situations, and this natural disaster, Hurricane Helene, is an incredibly stressful situation. So, it is going to increase those numbers of domestic violence cases, and that is something that Pisgah Legal has a lot of those cases every year in a regular year, in a normal year when we don't have a natural disaster. So we know that that's going to increase this year because of the stress surrounding this whole thing.
If somebody's in that situation, you mentioned not only domestic abuse, but even financial situations, the key thing is, of course, contact Pisgah, or see if they can help
Mhm.
you out. But another key is you shouldn't just do nothing. In other words,
Right.
I guess the problem is, and I want you to address it, is that problems just don't tend to disappear, even though you'd
Mhm.
like them to. So I guess both in terms of domestic abuse and even rental situations, that you need to make sure what you're doing is legal, even though you
Mhm.
just can't throw your hands up and say, I'm going to ignore it. It doesn't
Mhm.
tend to go away. Is that correct?
That is correct. Especially with housing issues, I will say it is really important for people to try to get help right away. If they're being faced with an eviction or maybe even a foreclosure, if you own your house and you get behind on your payments, it's very important to reach out for help as soon as possible. If somebody's being faced with a foreclosure, I think the first thing to do is to make sure you talk with your lender. I think in situations like this one where we have a natural disaster, people may be surprised at how the lenders are willing to work with them, and willing to give them, maybe move some payments around, maybe change a schedule of payments, maybe give them a grace period. It's hard for me to say because everyone is different, but I definitely think that people don't realize that the person on the other end of the phone may really be willing to help. And they may be nervous to reach out and ask for that help, but it's really important that people don't ignore the problem because, just like you said, it is probably not going to go away and it will probably just get worse the longer that they wait. So I definitely advise people to try and work it out with the person, with your landlord or with your lender first. And then if it doesn't look like they're going to work with you, then call Pisgah Legal and see if we can help with the legal part of it.
And so if you call Pisco Legal, you get referred to what, an attorney at that point in time, and then
Yes, yes.
do you meet in person? Can you be on the phone, Zoom? How is that done?
So initially, when someone calls, they will work with a screener over the phone, and that person will figure out exactly what kind of help this person needs. They will connect them with the person who can help, whether that's an attorney or a paralegal, or one of our pro bono attorneys. They will figure that out. And then I think it's kind of a mix of meeting in person or on Zoom or on the phone. It really depends on the client's needs and the capacity of the attorney that they're working with. Some of our folks right now are still working out of town because of the storm, because of being displaced from homes. And so they may have to do more virtual work for a while. But, I think it just depends on the situation as to how they will meet and what works best for the client too.
And Tracy, talk about one of the other great services Pisco provides, and that was not only during tax season, but I guess it happens all the time, but that you were helping people not so much on taxes, but on the Obamacare, and getting help.
Yeah.
Is Pisgah still doing that?
We do. So we actually help people to apply for ACA healthcare, also known as Obamacare. We can also help people apply for Medicaid. And we do actually help people file taxes as well. And that is all part of a program that's called our HEOP program, the Health and Economic Opportunities Program. And the reason that we do those things is because we know that if somebody has health insurance, that is going to help them get better access to health care, and save money on that health care, on those costs. And then we also help with the tax preparation because, again, especially for low income folks, if you're super low income, you don't have to file taxes. The law says you don't have to file if you make under a certain amount. But what we have found is that when those folks don't do their taxes every year, they're actually missing out on tax credits that would help them get a refund. And so we want people to be able to save on healthcare and get those tax credits back because those really low income folks really need that money. And that money can make a big difference in their lives. So we want to make sure that they can, get that process done each year and then get that money back in their pocket because those are the folks who really, really need those funds. It's going to make a difference for them.
And what's a shame is that the process is not as easy as I think it should be, in terms of,
Yes.
especially with the Affordable Care Act, that was pretty
Mhm.
complex to do all that
Yes,
work. And I give Pisco a lot of credit because just to train to help people in that was a whole process. You just
it
can't
is.
walk in and fill in some forms. And so is Pisco, let's talk about that too. Is Pisco still taking or using volunteers?
Absolutely. We use volunteers all the time. We could not do our work without volunteers. So if anybody is interested in volunteering, they can come and learn how to help people enroll in healthcare. They can also learn how to do tax preparation. Those are two things that people can do on a volunteer basis. And then we have lots of other volunteers, though, who help with other things like administrative tasks. We have people who do those screening calls for us. Some of our staff do those, but we also have volunteers who do that as well. We have folks who help us just sort mail because we are a big organization. We get a lot of mail. That's how a lot of our donations come in. So folks help us just, sort through all that mail and log in all of our donations that come in, get mail to the right people. Of course, since we're a legal organization, there's also a lot of paperwork that comes via mail as well. So we really appreciate those folks who help us get those things to the right places. And we do have offices all around the region. So again, it's just sorting the mail is a big job.
And
We really appreciate volunteers.
if somebody wants to volunteer, what do they do?
So just like if they were going to get help from Pisgah Legal, they can also go to the website to volunteer. And again, that's pisgahlegal.org. On the homepage, there's a button that says volunteer, and you just click that button. There's a short form that you fill out with just your contact information. And then we have a couple of different volunteer coordinators who work for Pisgah Legal, and they will reach out to the individual and figure out what kind of work they would like to volunteer to do. And so that person will work with the potential volunteer and figure out if we have a good place to plug them in and get them started with work, whether or not they need training to do that work, and so they'll take care of all of those details.
If anybody's watching or listening, Tracy, I mentioned volunteering as a great opportunity to get experience, especially if you're interested in going to law school or you're interested in becoming a
Mhm.
lawyer or you're still in high school, whatever. Age limit, is there a restriction as to who you're looking?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure if we can take volunteers under 18. We would
Right.
have to ask our volunteer coordinators about that. But I will tell you that we have lots of folks who come to us and do internships while they're in college. We have multiple interns every year who help us with things, uh, ranging from fundraising. Like we had an intern who helped us with fundraising this year. She helped us plan events and execute events and helped us to organize some things. And really just do a better job of reaching out to our donors. But then we also have people who come and they're maybe social work interns. And so they work with our Pisgah Legal social work team to see what's involved in helping people who, have various needs. And we have in the past, we've had folks who interned for Pisgah Legal who ended up coming back to work for us when they finished school because they liked their experience so much. So it's a great thing. We really appreciate having interns come in and learn about what we do.
And I'll tell one final story about wasn't an intern as a volunteer, but a good friend of mine before your time, Tom Gallagher, volunteered to be with Pisgah Legal Services, and eventually led to a job with Pisgah. So
Hmm.
that's not
Hmm.
the reason you volunteer, but you never know. So if you
Hmm.
want to gain legal
Absolutely.
experience, what better opportunity than so if anybody's listening, even if they're not in law school yet, but you're interested in law, volunteer for a law firm or interested in nonprofit work or grant work or whatever, come
Hmm.
join Pisgah.
Hmm.
If I can ask you, Tracy, just one last time to recap, if folks want to get in touch with Pisgah, best bet, I guess, to start is the website.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of information available on the website about how to support, how to volunteer, how to get help, different, information about all of our different programs. So it's definitely the best place to start if you want more information. And that's pisgahlegal.org. And then people can call the office, 828-253-0406 if they have questions.
I have to ask you to
We
I'll
also
ask you to repeat that number one more time.
Sure. 828-253-0406.
Great. And you were saying if people have
And
questions?
we also are on social media, so you can find Pisgah Legal on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. So, there's lots of opportunities for you to follow us and see what we're doing, and see different opportunities that are out there if you're wanting to volunteer or just wanting to get involved in what we do.
Okay, well, anyway, I'd like to thank you, Tracy, for being my guest this Blaine's World webcast, and just whatever you're doing, keep it up. You do great work, and I thank you very
Thank you.
much. I also,
Thanks so much, Blaine.
okay, I also like to thank my producer, Capitassetti, and hopefully we'll bump into each other one of these times in real life. Thanks, Tracy.
Absolutely. Thanks.